So we've started the recording, which will be sent on the live social media after the show is completed. During the show, no live connections with the social media because of the sensitive audio, the kind of people, the panelists that we have, and the issues that we talk about. Yes, sir. Haji, Haji.
How are you?
Sunilda ji, how are you?
How are you, Didi?
Wow, hello, kya baat hai?
You are looking very colorful.
Yeah, I tried to be because I knew I am going to face you. I have to match you, na?
We on a formal webinar.
अरे वाह दीपा क्या बात है क्या बात है all the stalwarts are there now.
PK Agarwal ji, your video is not working properly. PK Agarwal, chairman of Cotton Corporation of India, one public sector gentleman. Agarwal ji, your video is not working clearly. We can't see you.
Snehata ji is on the.
Sir, we are fixing it, sir. Please, we are fixing it, sir.
Okay.
Snehata ji is on the board.
Yeah, Snehata ji is on board.
Where are you, ma'am?
Okay. Let us start the show now. Opening remarks from Brigadier Ajit Apte, 71 war, Bangladesh war. He has been with us through the thick and thin of this Amrit Mahotsav series, started in March last year, along with General VK Singh, Brigadier Ajit Apte, Lieutenant General Consul Himalaya Singh, Admiral Robin Dhawan, the Navy Chief. And we've also had people like General K. Rao. These are the kind of people, former Secretary of Sports, Julania ji, Madam Suti Kakka, a family friend. She has been also supporting us over the last 1 year over this Amrit Mahotsav series. We've completed 175 shows. And today is the National Civil Services Day. We'll discuss with all the stalwarts, whoever are capable or probably have been able to squeeze out time to join us today. And we'll be discussing with them the relevance of bureaucracy in the last 75 years of India's independence and way forward for the next 25 years when India touches the 100th year of independence. Opening remarks, as always, Brigadier Ajit Apte, the opening batsman for Vision India Forum.
Thank you, Amit. Good afternoon. It's an honor to be speaking today. The Civil People Administrative Services role. It was earlier known as the Imperial Civil Service or the ICS, which after independence of India.
Hello, Alok Ranjan.
And finally became Indian Administrative Services. This day was chosen to remember the day when Sardar Patel addressed the probationers of the Administrative Service officers at Metcalfe House in Delhi. And that's how we call this today as the day dedicated to the civil services. The Prime Minister's Awards for Excellence in Public Administration get awarded to various people for priority programs. Each year on this Civil Services Day, these awards bring together civil workers to network and learn about the best practices and to rededicate their services to the nation. The Indian Administrative Services, or all the civil services, form the backbone and the pillar of the nation's bureaucracy, like the political pillar, the diplomatic pillar, the civil services pillar, and the military. They all together combine to ensure that the nation's governance is properly managed. With these remarks, Amit, I think let me hand it over because these are very significant achievements which have been made by our bureaucracy in the past 75 years. They have played an important tool in governance and in management systems to ensure that our government services are properly set, they have a proper direction, and they have the desired dynamism and momentum to ensure that the country's progress is in safe hands. It also gives an ideal tool to the President of India and the Prime Minister of the country to remodel their strategies in consonance with what these policies have laid out. Thank you.
Thank you, Brigadier Apte, for your opening remarks. We'll be bringing you on and off as we always do with your succinct interventions during the course of the show. The minister, if he is currently there, because he told me 10 minutes he'll be needing. Bhagan Singh साहब, अगर आप शो पे हैं, तो आप जरा अपने ओपनिंग रिमार्क्स देने का कृपया कष्ट करें, अगर आप हैं हमारे साथ अभी. कुलस्ते जी, okay. Let me now go over to straight away to Madam Stuti Kakka. Madam, as a woman leader, along with you, we also have Srilata Srivastav ji, former Secretary General of Lok Sabha. Madam, what would you suggest to be the areas of improvement straight away in terms of bureaucracy over the next 25 years so as to have the optimal output from the bureaucracy of this country?
Actually, my phone is not working very properly, so why don't you ask Neelata? But I would say that an enabling environment is very essential, as my work in disabilities has shown that even the most disabled person, if you give them an enabling environment, they produce results and good results. So if you want the bureaucracy to work and the civil servants to deliver, then the environment has to be made, in some ways, I would say, more pleasant, more supportive, and more open. So I don't know if you all can hear what I'm saying, but do ask Neelata to chip in. My phone is not working and the computer is not taking your passcode. Give me an easier passcode to get in. Can't hear.
Alok ji, what are your views in terms of handling such a big state? It's almost like a country, Uttar Pradesh. Your experience as a former bureaucrat, former chief secretary of the state of Uttar Pradesh, what has been your experience like handling such a big state, which is equivalent to some countries of the European Union? And what are your suggestions to the bureaucrats in the next 25 years? Because bureaucracy and India's growth story are inextricably linked.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to this forum on this very important day. And let me begin by wishing all the civil servants today a very, very happy National Civil Services Day. It's certainly the day of celebration for all civil servants. They should celebrate their achievements, whatever they have contributed to the development of the country. And it's also a day of introspection when they should think on how they can contribute to taking the country forward, as you rightly said, in the next 25 years when we complete 100 years of our independence. Well, Brigadier Apte rightly pointed out at the very beginning that 21st April has been chosen as the day for the National Civil Service Day commemoration of the address by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, whom I can very well call the father of the civil services in India. Because had he not been there and had he not defended the civil services in the parliament and in various forums, possibly civil services may not have existed in the form that they're existing today. Right after independence, there was a feeling which was against the civil services. The general feeling that about the ICS also that the service is neither Indian nor civil nor a service. And even to the extent that the Prime Minister at that time, Jawaharlal Nehru, was also of the opinion that maybe this was as it exists today may not be able to deliver in independent India. But Sardar Patel stood for the service. They said they have they have worked for the British government and now they're working for us. And I do recall the wonderful statement he made in 1949. And he said that, but for the efficiency and the professionalism with which the civil services has worked, maybe the Indian Union would not have survived. I think that's a great tribute to the way our predecessors in the service worked, saying something as big as saying that they were responsible for maintaining the Indian Union. We can also look back with pride on this day and say that civil servants have definitely contributed to the functioning of the democracy in the country, and to a large extent in the kind of development that has taken place, the civil servants have played a leading role. Yes, you rightly said that Uttar Pradesh is a difficult state. It's a complex state, and you said it is bigger than many nations. Yes, it happens to be the 5th largest nation in the world in terms of population. The population of 220 million, it is the 5th largest nation in the world. And I had the fortune of being the chief secretary of the state for more than 2 years. And I think it was a very challenging assignment when one got an opportunity to deal with all the complexities, the social complexities, the economic backwardness, the political issues, and the whole issues of community and other things which came up. And in that kind of an environment to deliver results, I think that was a great challenge. But one can look back with satisfaction and say that once the civil servants are able to force themselves together as a team, which I try to do in my tenure as chief secretary, it is possible to make things happen, definitely. Sometimes people are very skeptical. Sometimes people say that no, it's not possible for civil servants to do anything because of the politician or the interference of the politician at every level, and the environment is such that you can't really take decisions or you can't really deliver. But I'm not fully in agreement with this. I feel that a civil servant, even today, there's a lot that he can do where the politician doesn't really bother him really or interfere in his working. In fact, he assists him or helps him in doing so. In fact, this is something very important to understand, that in a democracy, it is of course the elected political representative who's the master. There's no doubt about it, and he should be, because he represents the will of the people. And the bureaucracy has to work along with him or with him or under his directions. He is the policy maker, bureaucrats are the ones who implement it. But the question comes is that where there is harmony between the two, it's like the two wheels of a vehicle, where there is harmony, where the politician is representing the will of the people and the bureaucrat is representing the rule of law or working according to the constitution. No, and if these two work together and in tandem, then the country moves forward at a rapid pace. And wherever this is not happening, wherever there is conflict or there are collision, then there are problems that take place. So I think this is very important, which I saw in my tenure in Uttar Pradesh also, that you have to be very, very careful in how you handle the situation while you're dealing with the political boss, and how you maintain your relations with them, and how take him together and along with him you in the path of development. I will say that you talked about Uttar Pradesh, and here I would like to say that not only, I don't want to talk only about myself, but I want to say that there's so many civil servants who have achieved so much. So this is a day, Civil Service Day. We should justifiably feel proud of the achievements of so many civil servants. Just to name it, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, there was a UP cadre officer, who, Parmeshwar Iyer, who was responsible for implementing the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan so brilliantly. Or for example, the vaccination, the entire program. How well has it been handled by the bureaucracy in all the states mostly? So brilliantly it has been done. So it is that bureaucrats have achieved so much, or even the Rashtriya Suraksha Bima Yojana, Swasthya Bima Yojana that was done, and Anil Swarup, one of another colleague of Uttar Pradesh cadre, was there. And I can even mention that when I was Chief Secretary of Uttar Pradesh, we could implement, like I just mentioned 2 projects I'll mention. We constructed the Lucknow-Agra Expressway, 328-kilometer expressway in 24 months. And including by getting land from the farmers, 30,000 farmers we acquired land. And where you could complete such a huge project in 24 months. Then the Lucknow Metro was completed in 22 months. All I'm trying to say is that there is a lot that has been achieved by civil servants over the years, and they can achieve a lot, they have achieved a lot, and they should justifiably feel proud of the achievement on this particular day. Thankfully, there is a system now where the Honorable Prime Minister is giving Prime Minister awards on this particular day to those civil servants who have achieved a lot, and it should be as it is. They have to be recognized, because if they are not recognized, then there is no inspiration for others to follow them. But here I would like to add a point that even today, I feel somehow that there is no documentation of the kind of work that has been done by civil servants. Very little documentation is there. There are no success stories are not being shared. Even today in each and every district of Uttar Pradesh, I can say, I'm talking of UP because I know UP the best. There are 75 districts in UP. In each and every district of UP, there are young officers, boys and girls, who are doing wonders, who are using technology in governance, who are bringing about radical changes in the way governance is done, who are tackling corruption, who are tackling various issues. But nobody knows about it. Nobody is talking about it. Our newspapers or our media does not report the good things that the civil servant does, though they're very quick to catch on to anything which a mistake somewhere. If one civil servant is caught for any issue of corruption, or there is an issue that one civil servant has slapped up somebody or otherwise, it will become a national news. But the kind of achievements that are taking place every day, this does not become national news. But I think it is the responsibility of us civil servants to somehow have a forum like this forum is there today to share experiences or even document in form of case studies. I have been a student of management, and I find that even today public administration as a subject as it is taught has borrowed from theories from management, from corporate sector, and we teach that. No, but that is not so relevant when we're talking of the public affairs. Here the theories emerge from the very nature of public administration. It has to be based on the case studies which actually people face at the field level, and therefore a whole new subject has to evolve, and there is so much material that is available, but just that it has to be, people have to bring it together. For instance, if some very good work is done like health sector, for instance, in Kerala or Tamil Nadu, why should not Uttar Pradesh learn from what has been done in Kerala and Karnataka or Tamil Nadu? Why do they have to reinvent the wheel on their own? There is so much of learning that is possible if there is a sharing of experience, if there is an exchange of experiences. So I think today I'm trying to really advocate for that let us get together and share our experiences together, have more and more forums like yours, have more and more documentation, have more seminars, webinars, somehow bring out in front of the people that kind of good work that so many civil servants are doing. And this, let me tell you, will change the perception that is there in the minds of people about the civil servant. Today, I agree, the perception is not something to be very happy about. Many people feel that the civil servants do not do any work really. They get promotion on the basis of seniority. There's no specialization, domain specialization, and they don't gain any knowledge after once they get into the service. And so many other things that are being, leveled against the civil servants. And what to say from outside? There's attack always on the civil service from outside, from various sections of society. But even us civil servants, and in particularly I can talk about the IAS as a service, where some of our own people, in trying to be very progressive, have a habit of criticizing their own service. Only recently there has been some debate after a spate of articles emerged in the newspapers about somebody writing about has the IAS failed the nation or has the IAS failed to deliver public services and so on and so forth. And then the counter coming, what are the constraints in which the service functions? Is the service fully unfettered totally that it can do whatever it wants to do? Even the political interference thing has gone up over the ages. The whole sort of Damocles, that is the transfers, hangs over the head of the civil servants every other day when he's trying to perform. More than that, decision making. Decision making is so important. Decision making is in fact so vital. Anybody says that bureaucrats must take decisions, and they should take decisions. Unless they take decisions, things will not happen. But why doesn't the bureaucrat take decisions? What happens? I find when we've all joined the service, we're also full of idealism. We're all full of hunger to do something for the country. But a change comes over after 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, and suddenly people start becoming extra cautious. Why are they becoming extra cautious? Because any management theory will tell you that not 100% of your decisions can be correct. They cannot be. If you're taking decisions, you have to take wrong decisions. If you can even take 60% correct decisions, you're doing a very good job, I must say so. But then what happens is the 40% wrong decisions, you get held accountable for that. And worse, if somehow criminal charges are leveled against you for those wrong decisions, then the bureaucrat is not going very you're going to take decisions. He is going to first of all save his own skin. And that is why he'll form committees, or he'll refer the file to law, or he'll refer the file to finance, or he'll, as far as possible, make the file move as fast as possible without it reaching to its logical conclusion, and make it sure that nobody can fix accountability on him later for any kind of decision. So this leads to a climate or an environment where decision making is not at a premium. And as I must mention, there are 4 C's I always say. The 4 C's were sitting on the back of a civil servant today. And 4 C's are the courts, the CVC, the CAG, and the CBI. These 4 C's they make sure that your first attempt should be to somehow save your skin. Because somehow you don't know. You may take a decision in the public interest today. By hindsight, 10 years later, somebody might come and say, no, that is not the right decision. And then you're held criminally liable, or somebody, there's a case against you, or you're facing an inquiry or an audit objection of serious nature. So that is why I think somehow, if you want to improve governance, and the government really is keen in improving good governance, which I think they are, they should find a way out of this kind of a thing, Malay. Why? And I think support a good civil servant who's taking decisions in public interest and for the people. I think this is very, very important to keep in mind. At the same time, when I think of these favorable things, I must say today also that civil servants must also introspect. It's a time, this today, 21st April is the day for introspection, to think where the country is, where they take the country forward, next 25 years, where the country should reach, what is the vision for that, and how they should reform themselves and reform the service in so that they may be able to deliver results and make it forward. The crucial thing is result orientation. The service has not to be a status quo service. Today, civil servants are taken as to be upholding the status quo, but that is not how it should be. In the new environment where things have to rapidly change, a civil servant has to become an agent of change. He's a change agent. And if he's a change agent, then he has to work in a very, very different kind of a manner. He has to work very professionally. And of course, I agree, there should not be automatic promotions at each level. There should be professionalism. There should be selection for the various top level posts. I am full agreement. The civil servant must upgrade his knowledge every other day so that he's really eligible for a top post where he gets selected or he has to perform. And before I end, the main thing I want to make is, I think today, what a civil servant must look for is that he has to make a difference to society. It has to be transformational, his role. It's not a transactional role, it's a transformational role. He has to consider that every decision of his touches the people, or touches very closely the life of people. And therefore, if he can influence the life, he must do something which can make a difference to the society and the life of each and every individual, in particularly to those who are underprivileged or backward or have been left behind by the society in some way. I think if this goal is kept in mind, then surely the next 25 years will be years where the civil service can perform, can deliver, and can justify their existence. And we can get together on this day to celebrate more and more of the achievements of civil service individually and that of the service as a whole. I think that's all I have to say to begin with. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Ranjan. I think the reminiscence of the bureaucracy that you spoke about in the beginning is something which we've been also contemplating by bringing together all the top bureaucrats like you and collating their experiences. This is probably one way in which we could have started today. Let me quickly bring in the former Secretary General of the Rajya Sabha, an old friend, Mr. Deshdeepak Verma ji. He has had the privilege of probably bridging the gap between the bureaucracy and the political setup of this country by working in very close quarters with all these politicians of the country. And Deshdeepak ji, your views on the bureaucratic and political chemistry and equations. Unmute yourself, sir. Unmute yourself.
Thank you, Amitji. Let me begin a bit in a lighter vein by justifying my presence on this panel, because Rajya Sabha is the body between the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. The Rajya Sabha has some exclusive powers, and one of the power is to create the All India services. So the All India services can be created by the Rajya Sabha. So one more reason for me to be there, even though you are very graciously had invited me, but that's just a comment. Now, coming back to the subject that you have chosen and for the day to day, which is very relevant today, I must say that the role of the bureaucracy, especially the IAS, has been misunderstood because we have always been measuring it in terms of the norms of a developed country. Role of a civil servant in a developed country and role of a civil servant in a developing country are going to be different. When we started off after the independence, we were supposed to maintain the status quo in some respects, maintain the law and order. And when you maintain the law order, you are basically a status quoist because you are not encouraging too many dramatic changes. So you have the very crucial role of ushering in the change without disturbing the status quo. That is because it's a developing country. And I must admire the service that as the times have progressed, as the country has grown, the role of the civil servant, role of the IAS, and even other services has gradually changed from, as Alok Ranjan put it, from a status quo to a change agent. And that role has been very gradual, very, in fact, streamlined. And it is in a way that, I mean, it will go to the credit of the service, that the service has been able to actually rise up to the requirements of the society, the requirement of the nation, and have been able to do this. And in every phase of the country's history, 75-year-old history, the civil servants have justified their presence, justified their role, and it has been recognized by everybody. Otherwise, you remember many many political people coming to the power and announcing from the top of the house, saying that we'll change the IAS, or we change the civil services and bring in some other systems, but they have not done it. All of them have eventually turned to rely on the services. So it is not something to be self-complacent about, but one has to realize the importance and the relevance of the society, for which we also need to strive. I'm not saying that service as it exists today and the service as it will remain, that is the most relevant for the society. It has to change. But the only point that I'm making is that during this period, the relevance of the service has remained, relevance of the service will remain. And of course, service also have to strive to be relevant. That is a very important feature. Now, since you have told me about the role between the interface between the politician and the bureaucrat. Now, the problem is that as Alok also pointed out, there are many times this excuse is taken that I'm not able to do X or I'm not able to do Y because of the interference of the politicians. The problem is that many of us, in our anxiety to probably save our position, save our job, we have not been mastering the courage to give the correct advice to the politician. In my own experience, many times when you give the right advice to the political people, they are willing to accept it. You have to convince them. The only thing is that if your argument is only procedure oriented, you only say that since this is the rule and therefore it cannot be done, probably it will be difficult to convince them. But if you are able to convince them by saying that it is in the interest of the country, it is in the interest of the state, and even in their own political interest, they would, most of the times, would agree. I have seen many senior bureaucrats and several occasions when people are afraid of even pointing out the problems in implementing certain things and doing something. So I think that is a very important role. And the fact remains is that whatever be the political system, there is always on everybody, there is some boss. There is a lower bureaucracy on which you are a boss. And they can also take an argument that I'm not able to do it because the boss, which is IAS and services, are like this. So since we do not accept their argument as an excuse, we cannot give the same argument as an excuse when we are working in a system and we have politicians at our head as our bosses. So therefore, I think it is most important that the executive priorities and the political priorities, they are synergized for the interest of the nation. And if you do that, your relevance will remain in the country, your relevance will remain in the society. Alok was also talking about that article which has recently been published, and it said it said that the country has the IAS has failed the country, and there was somebody who argued back and said, no, it is not true. So I would say that and I think there's some people who are in a hurry to be showing themselves to be very progressive and make these comments. But when you do a dispassionate assessment, we do not fare so badly. Maybe not the best, but not so badly. And the one problem with this service is that we have throughout our period, we are so much isolated, because isolation is always at the top. So that isolation is there, and we are so individually oriented that we stop taking pride in the service, we stop taking pride in ourselves. And that is one requirement of the service, which we must inculcate in our fraternity, in our service, and in whatever we do. We must take pride in whatever we are doing. And in fact, here I would like to salute our army colleagues, army officers, that they take great pride in whatever they're doing. And that self-pride also takes them a long distance. In our case also, we should have that kind of a pride, because that pride also makes you adhere to the values that society, that this service is known for. That is what we have been trained for. And that is what is, in a way, dharohar of the country. So we must do that. If you give me another opportunity, then I'll talk about a few more points. But
Yes.
at this juncture, I think I'll stop.
Yes, Deshdeepak ji, thank you so much. You very correctly put across various fine points with respect to the bureaucracy and what needs to be inculcated. Army has been, the three forces, the three services have had a very, very important influence on the forum's journey over the last 15 months in Amrit Mahotsav. Brigadier Rajit Apte, minces no words when he says that the bureaucracy needs to learn a lot from the army. Before we bring in Yogendra Narayan ji and G. Parthasarthi ji, former Chief Justice, Apte Saab, any few small comments from the army perspective for the bureaucracy? You people have been, inching towards that for a long time.
Amit, I'll just say that what Mr. Alok Ranjan has said and what Mr. Deshdeepak has said, valid points. And yes, we definitely in the armed forces have a different culture, different discipline, different commitment and dedication to the country. We have the great motto of saying service before self. I'll just say this much, that he brought out a very valid point. And I think if the civil services, especially the bureaucracy, actually call the shots even as far as the defense forces is concerned, would understand the hardships that we go through. And fought a war in 71 at the age of 20-21. I have served on the line of control in Kashmir. I have served in counterinsurgency operations. I have commanded a regiment on the international border. I have commanded a brigade during the Kargil conflict. The kind of hardships we go through, some of them could be understood before decisions are taken which are detrimental to the armed forces. It has happened many a time. Certain decisions have been taken or others which frankly do not conform to what the armed forces require. Take such decisions to understand what the armed forces actually go through. And leave it at that. I think Mr. Deshdeepak Verma brought out a very valid point. We in the armed forces are indebted to the great service by our bureaucrats, by the Indian Foreign Service, the diplomats, the Indian administrative services, and of course the politicians. I always believe that in any conflict that we fight, we are taking orders on based of the national policy or the national strategy, and that gets translated into actionable items by the forces on the ground. So even if I don't have something, I will never say I will not go into battle. I will go into battle. Hoping
Aapke sab-
the other items which are right in mind to go into battle and to give to a soldier will follow in due course. We
I think there is some connection issue with Brigadier Ajit Apte, former ambassador to Pakistan and Sri Lanka and a great speaker. G. Parthasarthi is there with us. His father, as far as I remember, once speaking to him, he told me his father was instrumental in bringing across, along with Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel ji, the civil services bill and all those initiatives under which the civil services was formed for the growth of this country. G. Parthasarthi, over to you. Enlighten us on the journey of the formation of civil services over the last 75 years.
Thank you. Really, I'm not all that distinguished. They've called me an extinguished rather than a distinguished diplomat. But the fact of the matter is, my connection with the services goes back to my childhood. My father was in the old Indian Civil Service. He was responsible for setting up the All India services. He worked with Sardar Patel and then became Special Secretary in the Home Ministry after Sardar died, and we went back to Madras. So that was my connection with the formation of the civil services. I had no contribution. It was entirely my father's. The What I wanted to say was that serving in the foreign service, we are like, in terms of our service conditions, in terms of discipline, very much on the pattern of everyone else. The only difference is that in a career we spend about one third of our career or less in India. Most of it is spent abroad. It has a bearing on your children's education, but there you are. That's a part of life we have to live with. And there's one advantage that we have in serving, which is that foreign policy is largely based on a national consensus. This has been a tradition since Nehruji's days. Yes, you did get a Swatantra party, and later on, you do have the differences. But seriously, in the recent crisis, um, there has been no difference between the BJP and the ruling BJP and the and the opposition parties when it comes to national interests. I mean, it's very easy to find fault with our politicians, but the fact is that at a moment of crisis, they do come together. I recall when I was in Bangladesh during the Bangladesh conflict, when I was in Moscow, um, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, when the conflict was won on 16 December, referred to Indira Gandhi as Durga. So, much as we say about our politicians and the problems we have, they have a role to play. They are responsible to an electorate. We are responsible to the government and our people. Um, in the case of the external affairs, by and large, there is not too much political interference in the running, in the postings. We manage it on our own, and most of us spend most of our life abroad, and therefore, you don't have the luxury of or necessity of running to political levels to get things done. And I think this is where we have done well. The service is professional. It is not affected in its daily things, writings by the what we send, which may disagree with government policy. I'm not expected to discuss it at that point in time, but yes, that happens. I mean, uh, at the just after Mr. Vajpayee's visit and when Kargil broke, I was in Pakistan. Um, I in my personal reports, I sent back very strong messages about why we were getting led up the garden path. But everybody took it in their stride. Not that Mr. Vajpayee mattered, but that I was giving an honest national input. Uh, and I think the most important point I would like to say is that, as I go back to the fundamental thing, our political class is smart enough to realize that in foreign affairs, you may have all the arguments and heated arguments you want in parliament, but when push comes to shove, you really are working on the basis of a national consensus. And that is, I think, one of the great things of India. When I've seen this when I was in Australia, when I was in Pakistan, I saw it when I was in Washington. there is always an element of competition within politicians themselves for whatever reason. But and even if you go to the Senate, we used to lobby very clearly if there was a Republican government with the Democrats. There was no way we would change that. But in this service, um, we have sort of gone by this consensus. We may disagree here and there, and the decision making is transparent, and you are convened, formally or informally told of what the decisions taken are on what you have said. So, as I was telling Amit, I said I really don't fit into the sort of from the sort of service we belong to, which is, and the other thing is, we get along fabulously with our colleagues from the administrative service or the police. Um, yes, there will be differences, but we're not treading on anyone's toes. Nobody's treading on our toes. And we have taken our advice as professional. I'm also happy now that I find some of our guys, young youngsters, Hardeep Puri, Jai Shankar, all into politics and doing very well. But that's a process of evolution. There are more or less a second generation. Jaishankar's father, for example, was an IAS officer, 1951 batch, K. Subramaniam, one of the most finest defense analysts India has ever had. And therefore, uh, as I said, times change, circumstances change, and you do find this sort of thing will come in. Another point I would like to make is that the life is much more easy for us because when we come back to Delhi, we're not treading on anybody's toes or taking anybody's jobs or competing with anyone. You're into what's available in your service. Of course, I moved out to the Prime Minister's office for 3 years as a spokesman, but the people took it. That was not treading on anybody else's toes. So, in the civil services, I feel one of the things is the inter-service rivalries. You see it, but it's somebody is better, somebody is higher, blah blah. I think we're all human beings, and it's time 70 years after independence that we learnt that basic fact that these are things we absorb, we change, and move on. Constitutionally, I must say that yes, we appear before parliamentary committees, and generally we have found the parliamentary committees, especially dealing with foreign affairs and defense and national security, pretty well briefed, pretty well informed, and the discussions with these parliamentary committees are quite serious. So, in the actual conduct of foreign policy, I think what has changed is the coming in of totally new systems of communication, and that has to also uh, function in be a crucial part of your functioning abroad now, because you're relating to people in the country you are accredited to. Unless you know the best systems of communications, know how to operate them, you're not going to get anywhere. And therefore, I must confess that the one younger generation, the one or two younger generations after me, uh, have done a far better job in understanding this than my generation did. Um, and coming back to the army, I must say, with the armed forces, we always have a defense advisor in big missions, and the army does and the military do us proud. And the most interesting point which people note is the armed forces and their representatives live with great dignity, but they do work on what they call as a chain of command, and that is very useful. Basically, back to Pakistan on the interesting postings. Soviet Union, one was there when uh, the Bangladesh conflict was breaking, and I want to tell all those who now very critical of the Russians, that in 71 they backed us to the hilt. They deployed divisions of forces on the borders with China. They gave us all the vetoes we needed. But times change, and therefore there's nothing permanent in that. But I don't think we should forget old friends for new. The world changes. You look one way or another because this is constantly a subject of public debate. Um, everybody has his uses. You have to have what is known as a sensitive approach of continuity and change. Uh, Another point is that we run across a lot now more than ever dealing with assertive Indian communities abroad and making very difficult demands. But you have to addressing them becomes important because right now you're in a very comfortable position uh, in terms of your foreign exchange because which is largely aided by those remittances which come from our workers living abroad. And the focus has really now been shifted to for Indian missions abroad, primarily looking after and spending most of your effort looking after the Indian community because everybody is very clear, especially the guys from the Ministry of Finance. भाई इसको इन लोगों को खुश रखो, let them keep sending more money and not sending it to a third country. And this is has become an integral part of running foreign policy, the local Indian diaspora, whether it is Dubai or whether it is the United States, where everyone from the Vice President of the United States downwards was formerly Indian. You run across a very wide cross section of Indians you have to deal with. It is different for different countries, different circumstances. It will be different in Africa. And incidentally, if I may say about Pakistan, uh, Karachi to me was fascinating because all the Indian refugees, Muslim refugees who went to Pakistan by 1975 onwards, they became totally disillusioned with continuous military rule and what they called as Punjabi domination. And I recall that once we showed them the film Garam Hawa. I don't know if anyone's heard of it, but it's about partition and the trauma family went through. And the Pakistanis were deeply emotionally affected much more than we were. I told them I come from Tamil Nadu, but partition did not affect me, but it did. So it's been once you learn to adjust your life to that of foreigners, you'd be a very stupid man if you don't adjust your life to Indians or of any variety, and you go by considerations of caste, creed, religion, whatever. Um, that I think is the only thing I can say I've learned. I don't think there's much I have conveyed, but beyond saying the circumstances under which we function, and as I said, one thing which we enjoy here is all the people who were with us in the Civil Service Academy earlier in Metcalf House and then in Mussoorie. We all have fond memories of each other and get along. So thank you so much. I don't think I had much to say or much to convey, but to say that when I was talking to a Pakistan High Court judge, I recall he saying, "अरे भाई, इसका तुलना मत कीजिए आपका और हमारा, हमको तो फौज को सुनना पड़ता है आप लोग अपने पॉलिटिशियंस को भी नहीं सुनते." Thank you.
So before I bring the Honorable Minister who has joined us now, Fagan Singh Kulasteji, before I bring him on board, he's just come rushing back from a meeting with Kishan Reddy ji. We also have the former Chief Justice of India, Justice K.G. Balakrishnan. I must really thank him as always. He spares so much time on the forum and listens to everyone. Today is a very beautiful day. We have such great stalwarts sitting with us. But Yogendra Narayan ji, He has also joined us despite his traveling. He is the first chairman of NHAI, 1965 batch IAS officer, and he is also somebody who was instrumental in the formation of the Greater Noida Authority. Yogendra Narayanji, your views on the evolution of bureaucracy over the last 50 years? Unmute yourself, sir. Unmute yourself.
Thank you very much for inviting me to give my thoughts on the Civil Services Day. First of all, I would like to congratulate and send my best wishes to all my brother officers and all those who have seen the evolution of our democracy in the last 30 years, because they have all had a hand in the contribution to the growth of this country. I must also start off by saying that Civil Service Day is not only a civil service day for the IAS, it is for all the civil services, that is the central services, and all the going down to the rural development services, the BDOs, etc. So we are all part of the civil service, and that is what makes us a monolithic organization, which can do wonders if we coordinate and combine with each other. I've always thought of IAS as a social service. It gives us a great opportunity to do social service to our people, and with some empathy and support, we can help them to improve their lives. If we see the evolution of the Indian civil service, which in 1948, it was declared as the Indian Administrative Service, and the first competition for the IAS was conducted by the Union Public Service Commission in 1948. Since then, it has been a long journey. Yes, it is true. I'm of the 65 batch, and there might be older people, more people to me. But in their respective areas, they have done wonderful work. Even when partition took place, it was the civilian bureaucracy and the civil services that helped in keeping the country united. Then again, when the princes were there, the various Rajas, Pramukhs were there, the integration of the Indian states into an Indian Union, the Union of India, as envisaged and written in our constitution, was a product of the hard work put in by the civilians, of course, supported by the army and all other organizations, which had a great hand in keeping India united. So I salute all of them, and I would like to further add that though IAS has been the butt of criticism, a lot of criticism for what it has not done, but there should be also praise for what has been done. If we are moving into a 4 trillion economy, if our trade is growing, if our agriculture production is high, and yesterday the Prime Minister said the milk production is the highest in the world, somewhere the civilians and the civilian administration has hand. And therefore, when we denigrate some of our officers or some of the actions taken by our officers, brother officers, we must also keep in mind that the larger community of civilian officers has done tremendous work for this country. And even today, if India is ranking in the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world, it has a lot to do with what the civilian administration has done. And if our tax revenues are going up and we can afford more of the, to strengthen our defense forces, to keep our borders safe, it is again substantial work done by the civil servants. Therefore, we must encourage our civil servants. We must motivate them to do better and motivate them to treat the ordinary citizen with empathy and sympathy. We must know that today it is not the foreigners who are ruling India. It is the Indians who are administering other Indians. And we civil servants must also realize that we have been empowered to be holding the post that we are holding for only for a certain period of time. After that, we go back to our civil society. We go back to our families. We go back to our homes, and we become ordinary citizens, subject to the same rules, laws, regulations as anybody else. So we must always treat this post as a post of trust, in which we have been entrusted with certain powers for a temporary period to administer and do justice to our own people. And I think this is the approach which, by and large, the large number of our civil servants have taken this approach. And that is why they are loved, they are endeared by the people also. So civil services must continue to do the good work they're doing. And I must tell you that the good work being done by not only IAS officers, but by others during the time of the pandemic. Like our doctors did excellent work during the pandemic. We should treat them with honor and respect. It's a civil service day, not only for the IAS, but for all these civil services, whether they are doctors or, scientists or surgeons or anywhere else who are members of the civil service. So let us today pledge ourselves that on the Civil Servants Day, we wish well all our civil service brethren, and let us honor them, let us motivate them by giving them the due respect. We have all worked in very hard times. There have been floods, there have been, disaster, and all these disaster management being done by the civilian authority, of course, with the help of the defense forces. It's a civilian government under a civilian leadership and under civilian administrators. So basically, it's the responsibility of the civil servant today to take the country forward. We have played our role in our own time. Our youngsters, our contemporaries today in the civil service are also playing their role. The Foreign Service, for example, has done tremendous work in diplomacy. The way India has been able to raise its head even to vast superpowers like USA and Russia is because of the Indian diplomacy. The reason why we have been able to protect our borders is because of the defense forces, duly supported, financed, with all material support, as well as the necessities of fighting through the taxation and other measures thought of by the civilian governments and civil servants. So let us remain united. I think that's the first thing the Civil Service Day should say. We should not be bisected and trisected into defense and civil services. We may celebrate our own days because we want to honor our brethren of belonging to each sort of service community. But let us remember that we are all united, that we have to coordinate to take this country forward. Coordination, cooperation will take this country forward as it has done so far. We've had a wise civilian political leadership also, which has been, in charge of the civil services. And as Sardar Patel said in 1947-48, when he was creating this Indian Administrative Service, that if we do not have a strong civil service which is able to freely give its comments and opinions, this country will not progress. This country will not remain united. And the reason why the country is united, because we have encouraged dissent, we have tolerated dissent, we have accepted that suggestions would come from the common man, common people, and we will act in a democracy according to their suggestions and advice. And we've been holding elections under the civilian leadership. Civil servants have played a very active role in conducting these elections freely and fairly. So even the survival of democracy has been to a large extent because of the civilian administration. So with these words, I would like to close, and I would like to thank you for inviting me. And on this day, let me wish once again all our brethren of the different civil services and of the judiciary a happy Civil Services Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Narayanan. Mr. Narayan, former Defense Secretary, Government of India, and also the first chairman of NHAI. Let me, as he was quoting Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel's speech when he set this up, the services, it's the service of steel, the mindset of steel that is needed for this country to progress. And here we have the Minister of State Steel with us, Government of India, Fagan Singh Kulaste, Minister of Steel, Minister of Rural Development of State Rural Development, Government of India. कुलस्ते जी नमस्कार, बहुत बहुत आभार आपका, आपने आज समय निकाला और हमारे साथ आप जुड़े इस कार्यक्रम में। हमारे साथ में फॉर्मर चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ इंडिया के.जी. बालकृष्णन जस्टिस जी हैं और ये बड़ी देर से वेट कर रहे हैं आपका और बाकी सब लोगों का भी सुन रहे हैं। आपके साथ जुड़े हुए हैं जी पार्थसारथी, फॉर्मर एम्बेसडर टू पाकिस्तान और श्रीलंका। हमारे साथ आलोक रंजन जी हैं, फॉर्मर चीफ सेक्रेटरी ऑफ उत्तर प्रदेश। देश दीपक वर्मा जी हैं जो कि सेक्रेटरी जनरल रहे राज्यसभा के। स्नेहलता जी थी, वो अभी चली गई, वो लोकसभा की सेक्रेटरी जनरल रही। स्तुति कक्कर मैडम है जो कि सेक्रेटरी डिसेबिलिटी डिपार्टमेंट्स की रही। और हमारे साथ और भी काफी लोग थे, अभी एक एक क्योंकि ऑनलाइन कार्यक्रम है। इसके अलावा हमारे साथ ब्रिगेडियर अजीत आप्टे हैं, 71 बांग्लादेश वॉर के एक सेलिब्रेटेड सेना मेडल सोल्जर। तो फगन सिंह कुलस्ते जी आईएएस अफसर, आईपीएस अफसर, आईआरएस अफसर, ये सारे लोग इस देश की उन्नति के लिए बहुत ही कारगर और बहुत ही अभिन्न अंग माने जाते हैं। सरदार वल्लभ भाई पटेल ने हमें इस देश को ये धरोहर दी और आज इन्होंने ये देश को यहाँ तक लेके आए। आने वाले सालों में और अभी व्यक्तिगत तौर पे भी आप 30 साल से सांसद रहे हैं, इतने सालों से आप सांसद हैं, आपका ब्यूरोक्रेसी के साथ में किस तरह का संपर्क रहा, क्या आपका एक्सपीरियंस रहा और आने वाले समय में आप इनसे क्या अपेक्षाएं रखते हैं?
धन्यवाद अमित जी। सबसे पहले तो मैं आपको बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं और आज ये नेशनल सिविल सर्विस डे है और इसे अवसर पर आपने एक बहुत अच्छा ये कार्यक्रम वेबिनार के माध्यम से आयोजित किया है। मैं हमारे चीफ जस्टिस के.जी. बालकृष्णन जी जो हमारे फॉर्मर चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ इंडिया है और जितने हमारे पार्टिसिपेंट हैं, आपने अभी जैसा कहा कि हमारे चीफ सेक्रेटरी रिटायर्ड, हमारे फौज के जो ऑफिसर, अनेक हमारे जो डेलीगेट्स हैं, ऐसे बहुत सारे लोगों ने पार्टिसिपेट किया है, सब अपने अपने अनुभव शेयर किए हैं। मैं इन सभी मित्रों को बहुत शुभकामनाएं देता हूं और विशेषकर आपको एक ऐसे अवसर पर आपने इस पूरे कार्यक्रम को ऑर्गेनाइज किया है। मैं चूंकि सोशल सेक्टर से मैं इस सामाजिक कार्य में आया और इसलिए मैं तो ये कह सकता हूं कि आज देश में हमारे सिविल सर्विसेज के अंदर, भले वो डिफेंस के अंदर हो, डिफेंस सर्विसेज में हो, हमारे सिविल सर्विस के अंदर हो, ऐसे तमाम तरह के जो हमारे अधिकारी रहे हैं या आज जो है, और देश के एक पॉलिसी मेकर, देश के अन्य संस्थानों के अंदर हो या किसी मंत्रालय या एक पॉलिसी मेकर के रूप में काम करते हैं, तो इससे ये अनुमान लगा सकते हैं कि इनके अपने अनुभव और इसलिए भारत के अंदर और चाहे भारत के बाहर सिविल सर्विसेज के अंदर जो हमारे ऐसे अनुभवी लोग हैं, उस अनुभव का लाभ है समाज के लोगों को, देश को मिलता है और इसलिए आज इनकी बहुत आवश्यकता है। देखिए सरकारें लोकतंत्र में कब कौन आने वाला है, कब कौन जाने वाला है, परंतु जो नौकरशाही हमारे जो स्टूडेंट्स हैं उनको तो वही काम करना पड़ता है जो बेहतर हो सकता है। अभी जैसे हमारे पार्लियामेंट से संबंधित हमारी सेक्रेटरी जनरल भी इस तरह उनने भी बहुत देखा, हमारे बहुत जानने वालों में से एक है। और मैं कह सकता हूं कि जो अभी तक एक अपने अनुभव के आधार पर मैंने पार्लियामेंट के अंदर भी जो हमारे पॉलिसीज बनते हैं, लीगल साइड में हमने हमारे चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ इंडिया, जो हमारे फॉर्मर चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ इंडिया बाला साहब के बाला जी को भी मैंने देखा, उनके साथ बहुत बार हमारे कई विषयों में आपस में विचार विमर्श चर्चाएं भी हमने कभी एक दूसरे को शेयर भी किया। तो ऐसे अलग अलग क्षेत्रों में जुडिशियरी के अंदर भी देखे, कसाई के अंदर भी, तो कुल मिलाकर के जो मैं अनुभव कर पाया हूँ देश के लिए, समाज के लिए, ये सभी जो सेक्टर्स हैं, आज प्रधानमंत्री जी जो इससे खास तौर से जो आत्मनिर्भर भारत की कल्पना, उनने इन सब परिस्थितियों को ध्यान में रख करके आज उस कोविड जैसे महामारी से निपटने के लिए हमने आगे बढ़कर के जो काम किया, उसमें से क्या भारत को इन सारी परिस्थितियों से हम अनुभव का लाभ ले सकते हैं, इनमें से हम कितने लोगों को हम आज ये सुविधाएं फैसिलिटेट कर सकते हैं, इस प्रकार के अनुभव भी आए। और इसके कारण आज जो हमारे जो साइंटिस्ट है, वैज्ञानिक, हमारे सेना के जो लोग हैं, हमारे बहुत ऐसे सीनियर नौकरशाह, ऐसे सभी लोगों का ये जो अनुभव आया है, उस अनुभव के कारण आज देश की जो परिस्थिति बनी है, देश आज ऊपर जा रहा है। इससे प्रधानमंत्री जी की जो कल्पना है, शायद मुझे लगता है कि ये सब चीजों को हमने बहुत नजदीकी से देखा है। इतने सारे हमारे जो किड्स है, उनमें से जो यंगर्स हैं, उनके साथ में भी उनका बैठना होता है, बातचीत करना होता है। और मैंने कोविड में अनुभव किया कि जितने भी अलग अलग जो नए हमारे IAS IPS या जिसको हम ये कह सकते हैं कि नीचे लेवल पर डिप्टी सेक्रेटरी ग्रेड तक के ऑफिसर्स, जो हमारे PM है, कलेक्टर है, जो नीचे स्तर पे CO है, एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर्स है, इस प्रकार के लोगों से भी इन परिस्थितियों में मेरा व्यक्तिगत तौर से संवाद हुआ और उसमें से जो अनुभव आए हैं, तो कुल मिलाकर के एक देश को हम उन ऊंचाइयों तक पहुंचाने में इन सारे हमारे जो कर्ता है, इनका बहुत बड़ा योगदान। और चाहे सिविल सर्विसेज के अंदर अलग अलग है, हमारे भारतीय प्रशासनिक सेवा के जो विंग है, हमारे ARS है, इंडियन फॉरेस्ट सर्विसेज के लोग हैं, इंडियन हेल्थ सर्विसेज के लोग हैं, हमारे फॉरेन सर्विसेज के हैं, IAS इंस्टीट्यूट इनके लोग हैं। इन सबके अनुभव के आधार पर मैं ये कह सकता हूं कि आज इनमें से बहुत सारे ऐसे लोग हैं जो अलग अलग संस्थानों के अंदर काम करते हैं, जो हमारे सेक्रेटरी स्तर के जो ऑफिसर्स हैं। तो ये सब परिस्थितियों को देखने के बाद ये अनुभव आया कि जो हमारी सिस्टम है डेमोक्रेसी का, उसमें जो उनके अपने एक्सपीरियंस से उस अनुभव का लाभ हमको मिलता है। और इससे आम जनता जो नीचे तक है, हमारा जो फीडबैक आता है, उसको कैसे इम्प्लीमेंटेशन कराना, उसका क्या मापदंड हो सकता है, हमारे पैरामीटर्स क्या हो सकते हैं, उसको लेकर के हम आगे बढ़ते हैं। और उसमें से अलग अलग सेक्टर्स के अंदर आज जब हम सोचते हैं, तो इससे एक रास्ता निकलता है और इसके कारण देश आगे बढ़ सकता है। ये एक अनुभव आया है और इसके कारण हम आज भारत को ऊंचाइयों तक पहुंचाने में ये जो वर्ग है, इनके अनुभव के आधार पर हो रहा है। और मैं ये भी कह सकता हूं कि अगर शायद हमारे देश में जिस समय ये जो व्यवस्था लागू हुई, उस व्यवस्था के साथ में आज पूरे पुराने समय में भी देखें, अगर ब्रिटिश के समय में भी जो हमारी व्यवस्था थी रसाई की, थोड़े उसमें से जो चेंजेस आए हैं, आज की परिस्थितियां अलग हैं, परंतु कुल मिलाकर के जो व्यवस्था है, ब्रिटिश का जो पार्ट है, उसमें से जो बेहतर हो सकता है आम जनमानस के लिए, उसके बारे में सोचना, ये हम आप जैसे सोच सकते हैं। परंतु जो हमारा नौकरशाही है, डेलीगेट्स है, वो एक पॉलिसी मेकर के तौर पर काम करते हो और इसको स्थायी समाधान, स्थायी व्यवस्था और इसको एक प्रकार के निरंतर भारत के विकास में सतत एक प्रक्रिया में कैसे उसको आगे बढ़ा सकते हैं, इसमें बहुत बड़ा जो कंट्रीब्यूशन है, मुझे लगता है कि हमारे करसाई का बहुत बड़ा योगदान है। अनेक संस्थाओं में एनजीओ वगैरह को भी मैंने देखा, अनेक ऐसे जो सेक्टर हैं जहां पर आज हमारे इंसर्जेंसी का भी क्षेत्र देख सकते हैं, इस प्रकार के क्षेत्रों में भी अनुभव आए हैं। परंतु जब इनसे अगर कोई संघर्ष करना है, अगर इस दिशा में हमको सोचना है, तो इन सब परिस्थितियों को कैसे हम ठीक प्रकार के लोगों से हम उसको लिंक कर सकते हैं, लोगों को हम कैसे समाधान और संतुष्टि दिला सकते हैं, इस पे भी जो पॉलिसियां बनती है, नीतियां बनती है, उसमें भी हमारे व्यवसायी का योगदान है। क्योंकि हम डायरेक्ट इस प्रकार के इंसर्जेंसी या इस प्रकार के लोगों से फाइट नहीं कर सकते। जैसे आज हमारे देश में जो परिस्थितियां है, उनके लिए भी हमारे, क्योंकि जिस प्रकार का अनुभव उनकी अपने योजना और स्कीम्स, उनको नीचे तक पहुंचाना, उनका इम्प्लीमेंटेशन नीचे कैसे हो जाए ताकि इस प्रकार की घटनाओं को हम रोक सकते हैं, उसमें योगदान शायद इससे करप्राई का होता है। तो मैं केवल यही कह सकता हूं कि इस प्रकार के लोगों के साथ में बहुत बार मेरा मिलना, बार आपस में विचार विमर्श होना, और आज देश के चाहे कनेक्टिविटी के क्षेत्र में आप देखिए, अधोसंरचना विकास में आप देखिए, आप चाहे ड्रिंकिंग वाटर का कोई प्रश्न उठता है उसमें आप देखिए कि जो हमारे साइंटिस्ट है, हमारे इंजीनियर है, हेल्थ सेक्टर को देखिए और कैसे हम बेहतर इसको अच्छा कर सकते हैं, रूरल और अर्बन को जोड़ करके, तो लोगों को जो हम फैसिलिटेट कर सकते हैं उसके बारे में हमारी क्या उसकी कल्पना होती है, इसको लेकर के आगे बढ़ते हैं। और यही मैं आज के इस अवसर पर मैं हमारे सारे नेशनल सिविल सर्विसेज डे के अवसर पर आपने इस पूरे आयोजन को रखा, इस वेबिनार को, वास्तव में हमारे जितने भी जो अलग अलग सेक्टर्स के जो हमारे ऑफिसर्स हैं, सेना के लोग हैं, सर्विसेज के लोग हैं, उनके अनुभव को यहाँ शेयर करने का भी और जानने का भी एक मौका मिलता है। तो इस प्रकार के आयोजन में आपकी बहुत बड़ी भूमिका है। आपने देश के उन ऊंचाइयों को छूने का जो प्रयास कर रहे हैं, उसका माध्यम हमारा होकर चाहिए, और इसलिए मैं अमित जी आपको बहुत बधाई देता हूँ।
धन्यवाद, धन्यवाद कुलस्ते जी। मंत्री जी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। ये बताएं, आप लोग जब ग्राउंड लेवल पे डील करते हैं, तो ये जो कैडर वाले लड़के जो आते हैं आईएएस से निकल के, ये अलग अलग राज्यों से आते हैं, तो क्या आप लोगों को ये बेहतर नहीं लगता कि जो आपके राज्य के ही लड़के हैं वही आपके वहाँ स्टेट में या कैडर के वहीं पर अलॉटेड हो, तो उससे उनको भी और आपको भी सुविधा ज्यादा हो? ये एक छोटा सा प्रश्न।
देखिए, जैसा आपने कहा कि ये जो नए लड़के हैं, जब इनका असली सेवा में जब चयन होता है, और उसकी जो भी है जो कैडर, कोई नॉर्थ ईस्ट के अंदर हो सकता है, कोई हमारी सेंट्रल इंडिया के साउथ के अंदर, या हमारी यूटी है, यूनियन टेरिटरी है, आप देखें कुल मिलाकर के मैंने बहुत सारे ऐसे जो जूनियर ऑफिसर्स जब वो ट्रेनिंग के साथ में जब पहली बार वो ट्रेनिंग आईएएस के तौर पर जाते हैं, तो उनको मैंने देखा है कि इसलिए पटवारी से लेकर के हमारा सर्किल इंस्पेक्टर होता है, नायब तहसीलदार, तो इस प्रकार के छोटे जो हमारे इंस्टीट्यूशंस है, संस्थान, उनके अंदर भी उनको काम सीखना पड़ता है। तो एक प्रकार का जो हमारा पटवारी का जो अनुभव है और एक आईएएस का अनुभव, तो आईएएस तो डायरेक्ट है, वो अनुभव के आधार पर नहीं आता, वहां से वो काम की शुरुआत जैसे रेवेन्यू सर्विसेज या रेवेन्यू डिपार्टमेंट से आप लीजिए। इसी प्रकार के फॉरेस्ट के अंदर भी मैंने देखा, क्योंकि इसलिए मैं इस बात को कह रहा हूं कि उनके जिला पंचायतों के अंदर लोग जाते हैं, पहले एसडीएम स्तर पर या नीचे स्तर पर, तो छोटे छोटे जो जनहितैषी काम, जनता के जो मूल विषय रहते हैं, उनको पहचानना, उनको आइडेंटिफाई करना, और उसमें से क्या हम रास्ता निकाल सकते हैं, इसके लिए क्या प्लानिंग हो सकती है, तो इस प्रकार के मन में भी कल्पना होती है। और इसको लेकर के कोई भी ऐसा स्टेट का किसी स्टेट का कैडर अलॉट किया हो, परंतु ओवरऑल जब उनको काम करना पड़ता है देश में, तो अलग अलग स्तर पर, अलग अलग स्टेट पर जो नए हमारे जो आईएएस खासतौर से निकलते हैं, आईपीएस है, IRS है, IFS है, या हमारे अन्य जो फॉरेन सर्विसेज की जो लोग हैं, परंतु जब एक साथ एक इंस्टीट्यूशन एक संस्था के अंदर जब उनको ट्रेनिंग करके निकलते हैं तो आपने देखा होगा कि अलग अलग क्षेत्रों के अंदर उनके जो डेलीगेट्स जाते हैं उनको एक प्रकार का विजिट करते हैं। तो मेरा कई बार ऐसे हमारे जो ग्रुप्स हैं उनसे भी मिलना हुआ है, तो ये अनुभव हम लोग बात करते हैं। और मैं तो बहुत बार ऐसे जो नए यंग हैं उनके साथ में भी मिलना हुआ है और साथ में काम करने का, तो मैं बच्चे की तरह, भाई की तरह मैं उन लोगों को कहता भी हूँ कि भैया अभी आपको बहुत लंबे समय तक चलना है, समाज में काम करना है, देश की सेवा करना है। और इसलिए ये जो नीचे स्तर पर एक प्रकार की मानसिकता बना करके इस क्षेत्र में आए हैं, इस क्षेत्र में काम करने के लिए आए हैं और आप ऊंचाइयों तक पहुंचेंगे। नीचे अगर हम ठीक इन छोटे छोटे विषयों को समझ पाएंगे, इनको समझने का प्रयास करेंगे, तो मैं ये कह सकता हूँ आज देखिए हर व्यक्ति या हर IAS सेक्रेटरी नहीं हो सकता, वो बीच में कहीं कहीं रुकता है, परंतु जो इनमें से ही जब ये प्रकार का जो अच्छी क्वालिटी या अच्छे उनके विविधता को लेकर के जब आगे बढ़ते हैं और काम की क्वालिटी और उनके प्रोग्रेस को देखते हैं, तो आपके उनके बहुत सारे जो सीनियर लोग हैं उनको भी वो देखते हैं, उनके आचरण व्यवहार पर बहुत निर्भर करता है कि ताकि वो उन ऊंचाइयों तक पहुंचे। ये एक प्रयास है अपने स्तर पर नीचे जूनियर लेवल से वो हायर लेवल तक, अपर लेवल तक पहुंचते हैं। उसके पीछे कारण यही है कि उनके अनुभव ये इस प्रकार का रहता है। इसमें कोई स्टेट का या इस स्टेट का इसलिए हमारा कोई संबंध नहीं होगा, IAS तो IAS होगा, IPS तो IPS है। तो इस प्रकार के लोगों के साथ में उनको जहां भी रहे, जिस क्षेत्र में रहे, पूर्व उत्तर में रहे, हमारे साउथ के अंदर रहे, सेंट्रल इंडिया में रहे, हमारे यूपी के अंदर काम तो वही करना पड़ता है। और इसलिए कहीं भी रहे, मुझे लगता है कि ये अपने आप में उनके अनुभव, एक्सपीरियंस का एक बहुत बड़ा एक मापदंड है जिसको लेकर के वो आगे बढ़ते हैं। ये एक बड़ा कारण मैंने जो समझ पाया हूँ, जैसे आपने कहा कि अलग अलग स्टेटों में उनके साथ संबंध, उनके वहां की क्या सिचुएशंस है, उस स्टेट की क्या परिस्थितियां, उसको जानना और उस आधार पर आगे बढ़ना। मुझे लगता है ये जो मैं समझ पाया हूँ, देख पाया हूँ, तो इस आधार पर हमारे जो जूनियर है वो हाई लेवल तक, अपर लेवल तक पहुंचते हैं।
Right. Dhanyawad, Mantri ji. Now I'll bring in the final comments from the for the Honorable Chief Justice of India, former Chief Justice of India, Chief Justice KG Balakrishnan ji. Sir, you've been patient enough to listen to all of us for the last 1.5 hours, 1 hour 20 minutes. And now the last comments from you about India's bureaucracy, your experience as at the helm of judiciary, having handled many issues with respect to bureaucracy. And what are your humble suggestions to the bureaucratic top guns sitting over here, along with the Honorable Minister of State, Government of India, Honorable Chief Justice of India, KG Balakrishnan ji.
Thank you, Mr. Amit. I am closely listening to some of the stalwarts in Indian bureaucracy, Mr. Parsaji, Alok Ranjan ji, and they are all the rare pieces of Indian administration. And Honorable Minister Kuraseji, and I learned a lot of things. How the civil service, the difficulties of civil service, how they are really as our Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel pointed out, they are the steel frame of India. India is in the field of agriculture, in the field of finance, in the field of our foreign affairs, in the field of all matters. It is a contribution made by the members of the Indian civil service is wonderful. Of course, there are difficulties in working in the civil service. There are in a democratic setup, the policy decisions are taken by the representatives of the people, and they are implementing the policies. And they are also sometimes, as a judge, I had occasion to come across in instances where they are all victims of political rivalry. They are to suffer. Good officers, but that is But there are very good officers who had given great contribution in that the limited area. But that was not, as one of the speakers said, these are not recorded properly in these, they just pass on. Because I just one or two incidents. In years back in Gujarat, in Surat, there was plague, and people started dying like flies, and people started escaping from Surat. So one collector, he completely cleaned the city, and it was brought under control. It was only because of his contribution. So that is so such things, and even in the tsunami which hit the coastal cities of Tamil Nadu, some of the civil servants, so the collector and all others, worked hard, and they helped the people in various ways. These are all, they work without any food, shelter, or time. They work hard through 24 hours. They work. These are some of the members, the IAS and IPS officers. Those. So they are some of them are extremely sincere and hardworking. But in the matter of promotion, I don't know whether, but we should recognize their talents, their contribution to the society. And I don't know whether every year there is any award, the best civil servant of the year award is called. So because maybe because it may be difficult to find it out. This sort of encouragement is necessary to help improve this, and training of these officers also can be improved. Instead of having one center in the initial training, the continuous education program also can be envisaged for the civil servants. Call-in groups. I don't know whether many of the internal matters I am not aware, but only some matters come before the court. Then I see, because sometimes, as said earlier, because of the political rivalry, they are victims. Sometimes I felt in one case there was a cabinet decision, and he was just implementing the cabinet decision and put his initial in the file, and he has become an accused in a case. So in a criminal case, see, such things also happened in sometimes because they are all they for them they all are political masters. There is no distinction A party or B party, but the political rivalry is sometimes hit hard on the civil servants, and they become victims of this. But gradually, now it is country is progressing. The country is made wonderful progress in various fields, and we shall not forget this contribution made by the civil servants. This is the only thing I can remember on this occasion. But I was closely listening to the various speakers who mentioned about the contribution made by the civil servants and the various the service matters they were narrating. So my thanks are due to Mr. Amit for giving an opportunity to listen to these members, the civil servants. So thank you very much. I wish all success for the continued program.
Justice Saab, it was a wonderful, I must thank people like Parthasarthi to have exceeded their time. Before we end this show today, Alok Ranjan ji, Brigadier Rajita Apte, Deshtipak Verma ji, Fagan Singh Kulaste, Stuti Kakkar ji, all of you, Alok Ranjan, everybody, thank you so much. One thing is for sure, before you join the services, you people know that you are jumping the kind of fires that you'll be jumping into. So, you believe in ahimsa, fine, but also keep in mind, nature doesn't fully endorse ahimsa, ecological balance. So there are two sides to the coin. You have to be in sync with nature. You have to do your best to do justice to the job or the profession that you've chosen. And if you really want to do justice to the job or profession you've chosen, then you have to walk the fire. And it's not an easy task in a country which is just into the 75th year of independence. 25 years going forward, we look forward to better situations, better environment for the bureaucrats to perform, and the country to really benefit from these great services. Jai Hind. Thank you so much, all of you. Jai.
Thank you.